Queensland Storyteller. I'm Kim Dodsworth. Today's short story, Box and Cotton, is set in the theatre. London theatre, no less. It's all about two middle-aged ladies from the backstage who, against all the odds, link their humdrum lives and together create something neither would have believed possible. Unfortunately, I've had to brutally shorten the story, but you'll get the picture. Better a little magic than none at all. It's from Australian Short Stories number 27, published by Bruce Pascoe, and it's written by Colin Burrough. It was on the occasion of Vera Cotton's official 46th birthday that the two of them met. At something like 4 a.m, or perhaps a fraction earlier, getting on for dawn nevertheless. In a state of beer-scented oblivion, deep within the smoky foundations of the notorious Orpheus cellar, had fawned a collection of cotton cronies, spread jovially about the patched, vinyl-cushioned wall benches, cheering on a marathon game of snooker, the inevitable passion of Valium Vera, dearly loved jolly violinist, as she was known to every West End musician. Nobody had been excluded from the public invitation that Cotton had printed in The Stage that Thursday. People in all fields had turned up, to the frantic dismay of Ursula, the manageress, who had advised all of her staff to prepare themselves for a 3-day non-stop affair. 3 days non-stop it turned out to be. Ursula was seldom out with her estimates about her familiar long-standing locals. But there had been one face she had failed to recognise as ever having been in her roost before. A large-headed, plainly dressed female who had looked ill at ease and alone in her singular air of tea-bags and hush-puppies, who had attempted to enter without signing in soon after 11 in the evening. This female, whose clear-framed spectacles had been perched clinically on her unsuitably powdered nose, spent the entire 5 or so hours stepping edgily in between swaying bodies, circulating obtrusively around the immediate vicinity of the noisy snooker table, watching intensely over... Well, that had been what Ursula had been suspiciously unsure about. So at around midnight she had cornered Lionel, the cloakroom attendant, and asked him, "Here, darling, who's the mother-in-law down there, eh?" "I know who you mean," bragged Lionel. "That's Betty Box," his acid tongue protruding from within one cheek. Oh, Ursula was tight-lipped not to have had more than that explained. Betty's proper name in full was Elizabeth Beryl Farquhart, and she worked in the box office at the theatre where Vera the violinist was a member of the pit. Only the people front of house were familiar with her, the ushers and usherettes, the ticket tearers, the program sellers, the managers, and Lionel in the cloakroom. She was a particularly private woman, a spinster some had guessed, a widow thought others, though Lionel, with his hawk-like eyes, had noticed otherwise. But yes, Betty Box they all called her, and she never went out anywhere, or so people had imagined until now. The idea had been shouting at her for months, and got louder every day. It was how to actually do anything, to make it all turn into action, that had been confusing her. But now was her big opportunity. Now she would boldly go where no other Farquhart had ever set foot before. Into the Orpheus cellar bar, there to make the moves she had planned every night in her nightgown, tossing about on her camphor-scented bolster. But now she had got there, she was baffled and unsure what the next step should be. There, only feet away, was the person of her dreams, ready to walk up to and say... But what should she say? Brandishing her usual pint of beer, the stocky Vera beamed gallantly over the snooker table, ready to take on the whole of the cellar bar. She was, all in all, the nearest thing to an overfed black mongrel dog, Her lips and nostrils looked grubby, as if she had been nosing about the ashtray, and her off-black hair was short-cropped into the back of her broad neck, shiny with oil, shaved in an uneven line, but regrowing in a prickly clump where she ought to have been advised to keep shaving. But who would have said it? Her plump behind threatened to burst out of her jeans. She was, however, charming, utterly charming. Vera fitted perfectly into this slot. She presided victoriously over her dim subjects, who, in contrast to her, were faceless and merged into an obvious mass of inferiority. From his post on the tall bar stool, Lionel, like a scorekeeper in a glass box, watched the birth of this indestructible duo. Whilst others exchanged shop gossip and tipped glasses like a blind, cloudy ocean on which the other two floated, Lionel, the ever-efficient, kept his minutes. It began, he recorded, with one circling the other, who purposefully ignored the circler until the range narrowed to a distance at which neither could retreat unnoticed, at which stage the two sets of eyes weaved slowly through the smoke and chatter, finally making a remarkable contact. After that, and even Lionel had to confess he could not say quite how they had done it, they were gone. Where to, no one could say, but guesses were made, theories formed, and the party had continued regardless. Gone, the two of them, into the grey of the Soho daybreak. The Lakes District had been the perfect haven for the months they spent there. A different guest house every night, a market, a riverbank, wherever they could find people to busk to. Alone on this venture, either of the partnership would have failed. Together, they succeeded to see places, entertain people, experience a unique kind of informed childhood that made them fearless and powerful. Betty collected the money and handed out the leaflets of the following day's program. Vera played and enchanted the herds of travellers. After only 5 weeks, their poster was stuck all over the Lakes District, and a succession of social evenings were bought out. People gossiped and praised. The solo musician played delightfully all the great classics, and her touring manager, a shrewd and practised businesswoman, promoted, publicised, bartered, was, without doubt, a walking box office. From hall to park, banquet to theatre, town to city, England to Europe, from suitcase to trunk, room to suite, they dared themselves to success. They met the Prince of Monaco, were guests at the movie director's yacht at the Italian Riviera. Betty now wore real pearls, Vera an exquisite collection of dinner suits. In Vienna there was a complete backing orchestra. In Moscow, a stage full of ballerinas. On the night of their ruthless return to London, the royal family attended their appearance at the Royal Albert Hall, and their career after that is history. When, after more than 20 years, the remarkable star submitted to retire under the persistent advice of her loving manager, their elaborate concerts lived on, hosted by and starring the many spectacular faces the twosome had picked up along the way and transformed into world-famous tradition. Ms. Cotton directed the concerts. Ms. Farquhart, Box, as she had come to be known to Her Majesty's Collector of Taxes, drew up the contracts, until her arthritic fingers and rheumatic leg restricted her to the confines of their Grosvenor Square home. Their secretary and accountant were promoted to directors of the company, which expanded to be the largest and most highly reputed theatrical management in Britain, Box and Cotton. Well, what a success story. That was Box and Cotton by Colin Burrough. I'm Kim Dodsworth.